Draft physics video. Comment video, I think. Had some bigger ambitions, but I think it'd just be comments. Probably will consume all of the time, but if I have time left over, yes, something better. So, I'll go back to a Dave Binks. Anyway, the force causing the apple to fall from the tree, Isaac Newton named gravity. Yeah, and there is a distinction between it and magnetism, when in fact the force is real by means of magnetic force, the only one in the universe. The same reason a balloon filled with gold, oh, I think I already did this, okay, yeah, sorry, well, I'll do it again, would break every bone in your foot if you let go, and a balloon filled with helium. You really think this is a rational argument about gravity, when really balloon filling has to do more with buoyancy in an atmosphere, and it's really not the same thing. The gravity is acting the same on each one of the little atoms. It's just because of the molecular structure that there's a change. So you're not even describing gravity, you're describing buoyancy within layers of mediums. And it's just not really the same argument at all. If you let it go straight up and leave the atmosphere, where the vacuum of space would burst the balloon. How simple does it have to be? I'm sorry, frankly, it's more complicated than that. That's all. That paragraph doesn't do physics. You have to do a little bit better than that. The interactions are more complicated than balloons full of atoms, but whatever. Alright, so this is in bold by this Don K guy. Is dead ether implied by Ken? Question mark. Well, an ether, by implication, is not something that has movement in it. So, if your argument is there something fundamentally different between, let's say a bowling ball. I throw a bowling ball, it rolls down an alley and hits pins. Now if I made the pins out of dominoes, and I made the alley out of dominoes, and I made the air out of dominoes, and I made the ball out of dominoes, and I made me out of dominoes, you could sort of say, okay, it's all one thing. A bunch of dominoes flipped in me. That flipped my arm with a bowling ball in it. The bowling ball left me as a domino, so to speak, and it hit a field of dominoes and, perturbated through the medium to the pins, and then broke the pins down because they're dominoes or something. You can do that. But is there any point in making it that level, one level more complicated than just saying, no, it's a ball that I released, I created the energy went through me into the ball traveled, and the ball hit the pins. Why create this medium to confuse things? Why the layer of complexity that's completely unnecessary? Because regardless of no matter what your ether is made out of, you have to poke it with a force. So if you're poking it and then it moves the force along, isn't that the same thing as just saying my finger kept going? Why complexify it? Why say I have to poke the ether and then the ether pokes along? So yes, I'm saying yes, by inference of pointless redundancy, if it's an active ether, it wouldn't serve any purpose. Alright, Ken is simply maintaining that light is not a particle. Well, it just really doesn't matter what you call. So really, you want to get into semantics over what a particle is, right? I mean, if it turns out that particles, quote unquote, are unicorn piss, I don't know. Particles are just come up with any kind of mechanism inside the thing. It's a Horton here's a who kind of argument. Is there really a point in saying I'm going to try to dissect it all the way down when we have something, a photon, that's incredibly reliable in terms of its function. It always does the same thing, and any phenomenon that makes it do something different, you can explain what the difference is, which is you've done something, you've created some structure that's imposing on it. But on its own, it always does the same thing quite reliably. So it doesn't have any variance in its structure. It always creates the same byproduct. So does it really matter getting into an argument about what the containment of that package of properties is? So the properties is it moves at the same speed, a consistent speed, it does it in straight lines, and it does it forever, and it always does it reliably. That's a particle. It can be defined as a thing that you can't change, you can't manipulate. So, you know, this again, so you're going to type half sentences at me and they're supposed to mean something. Ken is simply maintaining that light is not a particle. What do you mean? It's not a little package of highly consistent properties? Because if that's what he's saying, he's wrong. It is. So, whatever. Fuck that. So anyway, so then there's this obnoxious, you know, of course there's rude and then there's super rude. So 12, 12, 2, I don't know, you know, he takes 12 Prozacs and 12 Valiums and 2, I don't know, Narconauts. Anyway, I don't know, you know, I don't know what the name means. Alright, so it says, you're right, it has nothing to do with pathetic attempts at dishonesty or spouting of complete gibberish. So it's not even a rational comment. And then somebody responds to him, yep, you're right, all the detractors can't make an honest citation. True enough. And he says to him, fuck off, you stupid fucking retard. So, yeah, what's the point? So, I will block the asshole and I'll just delete this thread. Get to blocking him eventually after we finish reading. Alright, somebody called Chili Sauce post 5 divided by 11 equals 0.45454545. That's really exciting. Not at all. So then Stephen Burrow posted a long comment about, but you know, no details about anything specifically, but just, oh, I'm catching up and blah blah blah, so fine. Good for you. Continue to do so. My last video really was pretty rock solid, so I think it was my last, no, the video before that, the response video to the idiot was useless, but the video before that was pretty good. Alright, Bob Hicks. Gary, I've studied many of your videos and agree with much of what you theorize. My question is, where did the force come from in the first place? What is your opinion? Put everything in motion. I assume what put everything in motion is his question. I mean, the way he wrote that is a little strange. But anyway, so people often do this, and you're just, I'm baffled as why you would do this. I mean, why not ask the Pope? Where do you think anybody has any real evidence of origin? I mean, it's not really like evolution, where you can sort of tie things together and sort of get to, you know, fewer and fewer chromosomes or something. You can find different ways of identifying old stuff. The universe doesn't provide any of that, especially the small universe. And so, I mean, you know, what's the point of opining on something there's just not going to be any evidence of it? You're really not going to, you're not going to get the answer. You just can't reverse it. And even if you have a, I mean, no model can do it very well. I mean, there's just, you know, what's the point? You can say it started off with a certain number of free force-tons in a ball, and there had to be some atomic structure because there has to be something that slows the explosion down. Something has to drag. or all the tons would have just shot off like a light bulb and never touched each other. So it has to be something that creates drag, which gravity can work on over time. But who cares? I don't see the point of the question. I think the question is to understand how the universe we live in works, and again, trying to see the origins, the first cell being created or something. It's just a pipe dream. You're not going to see the first material object. You're not going to see a model of it. I don't think. Ever. Anyway, just attack it. Just attack it. Yeah, I'm sure this is going to be a great comment. I don't agree to matter affecting gravity as far as the amount of push-pull that is applied to said matter, mass. Push-pull. So, I mean, I'm explicit about the fact that there is no pull. Anyway, you're saying that a force is reaching something, then realizing it's bigger than it thought, so it sends more of the things applying said push-pull, and that just can't be gravity. This is all one sentence. Is a consistent and is equal. You can see that when you drop things of equal size but different weight, they will fall equal, and uneven size and weight fall even, best seen in zero atmosphere. That's just fucking shit. Yeah. I mean, so yes, you took a shit in my comment section. Brilliant. Yeah, and there's nothing in my theory that doesn't acknowledge that it's acting. I called it a nuclear force, dimwit. It acts on the subatomic particles. The electrons and the protons are being affected by gravity. So obviously, it just doesn't matter how dense the object is. The more dense it is, the more particles it will interfere with, the more force that will be applied. So wherever more force is needed to move something, more force will show up based on mass, in the sense that you'll end up trapping more, filtering more. The thicker the filter, the more force you collect in the filter. It's not that complicated. The tighter the weave, the more stuff you're going to catch. As for the fact that two bodies end up inciting the gravity in each other, the argument was kind of simple. So yeah, the more stuff you're filtering, that is you're catching, the less can hit the other thing. It's a shadow. See, shadow casting. When the shadow is cast, the thing will move into the shadow, because by the laws of probability, there's more stuff on this side hitting you and less stuff hitting you on this side, and you absorb the stuff at a consistent rate, well, you're going to move in the direction where more stuff is hitting you, just by the laws of averages. Shit. But yeah, just don't pay any attention to the actual video. I mean, that's all this guy's doing. Not paying attention. I mean, it's physics. You have to pay a little bit of attention. So anyway, delete. Alright, so something called a Dom Donaldson left some graphic text with his tongue sticking out. Yes, very mature. I think we can delete and hide forever. Thank you very much. Fuck off. Alright, so 12.12.2 again. You just say that the double slit math doesn't have any width. You dishonest fucking prick. And then just ask, what math do you deny? So again, if you post a link, you're not going to be able to, so you're going to have to ask somebody else to do it. But you don't have any evidence. Post a link to one YouTube video that does the math correctly. Just one will do. That has the slit within it. Just one. And they actually do the math. I mean, actually put numbers in the equation. Yeah. So then he says, he comments on his own comment. Why does it matter what those historical figures said? Clearly, I don't care what they said. So again, don't pay any attention, right? Clearly you're the one trying to make everyone else seem religious. Well, they were in fact religious. I was just reading up on Faraday because of some idiot comment like yours. And he was a religious nut, unfortunately. Oh, here. It's right here in this comment. And Faraday was against the ether anyways. Well, I didn't read that part in his biography on Wikipedia, but he was a religious kook. You're still fucking confused what's going on? Question mark. It's not even close to a rationally phrased piece of crap. Really, that's what it says. You're still fucking confused what's going on? Question mark. The answers are in all of your previous videos, but no one, certainly not Draft Scum, is going to take the responsibility for looking at what was dismissed without any fucking basis whatsoever. Like what? Again, no examples of anything. This is just crap. You're a disgusting fucking cockroach, and you don't deserve any fucking contact with anyone. Well, I mean, clearly you're demonstrating what you are, okay, which is, at minimum, really ignorant potty mouth, and what you deserve in terms of what you've earned in terms of any civil friends. I doubt you have any. So anyway, delete, and delete. Idiots. Alright, Don K. Alright, the mockery of God, true natural principles, and spiritual literal truth is fashionable only because it is tolerated as such. No commas here. However, this is not to be indefinitely. This will not be indefinitely. They're just so poorly phrased, and what the fuck does it have to do with any of my videos? The subject isn't religion. Yeah. Really isn't. Alright, so then Michael Folwell. Let's see. I expect you must grow weary of repeating yourself over and over, but don't give up. Some do appreciate your time and effort. Consider the fact that you are not being legitimately challenged by anyone who is deemed to possess the knowledge as to how things really are, to then logically argue your theory with you and point out any areas where you may not stand up to scrutiny, but hopefully time will tell. Yes, hopefully I'll acquire some better component of audience, somebody actually who maybe has a physics degree, and who I can challenge, and vice versa, and we can find out who's talking shit and who's not. Anyway, it's really fucking easy. So this is 12.12.2 as a response to Michael. To go unchallenged when you have a fucking God complex. So again, just completely irrelevant whether I have a complex of any kind. The point is I've made clear arguments in the videos with drawings explaining process. That's what the video was. Explaining a process, a model. Modeling. Giving you a factual drawn model, and it's your obligation to say how the model is wrong, not to talk about a God complex. But don't worry, stupid troll cunt, you're not even going to see this disgusting cunt get any positive approval for his paper mache projects. So again, just more evidence that these are the voices of people who claim to care about the truth, who think they have a truth that's infinitely well documented and proven, and this is the length they have to go to out of their fear. Yeah, someone ought to smash your fucking skull open, fuckface. And so Michael said, just to clarify, are you wanting to smash my skull or Gary's? Haha. Yes, it really doesn't, you know. Clearly a lunatic. We'll delete all of that crap. Alright, scientifically, 7 posts or so, which is just really rude in my opinion. So, especially when one of them is only 3 words. You could have just held back a little longer, I mean, fix that premature problem you have and just wait till you finish the video. Take notes or something would be polite. But posting 7 comments on one video, in my opinion, is just rude. Alright, you should watch my Schlock Lock video. Now, why should I? Your videos are silly. It's nice little drawings you do with your little heart symbols and your little lovey-dovey bullshit and trying to, unicorn reality. But it's crap. Sorry, it's crap. I show the fields, drawn as Tinkerbell, which are arms, see, grabbing each other. Oh, they're hugging. So, reciprocation is possible, and I have it on video. Too fascinating, not. Inverted and reflected. I don't know what that means, so fuck you. This was on part 3 of the DraftScience versus, I think, videos. I'm pretty sure it must be the Professor Lewin ones. Well, it doesn't say, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Let's see. He has all the answers except how, because he doesn't know, and keeps it hidden in silly language. This must be the Ken Wheeler, maybe the 3rd in the Ken Wheeler videos. Again, maybe put his name when you're going to talk about somebody else instead of saying he. But whatever. Let's see. I like your word filter. It's correct. It makes the charge. The filter doesn't make the stuff it's filtering, but whatever. Okay. Clearly, without the filter, yes, there's no segregation, and the segregation creates the phenomenon. He is going to say that energy and matter are separate, which is what I say. Well, obviously we have 2 different words, matter and energy. So obviously everybody sort of agrees that they're separate who uses those words something other than interchangeably. And most scientists or physicists probably do use them not interchangeably. They do know the difference. I am the only one to say energy and matter are separate. So the person who called energy energy and called matter matter, he wasn't the first. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think you're wrong about that. I say Einstein was a liar. Well, I say that's a silly thing to call Einstein. I don't think Einstein lied. I think Einstein actually believed this bullshit when he was young, and then he realized, ooh, that was sort of silly. But there was no taking it back because everybody fell for it. Energy and matter are separate. You can say that 3 times in one fucking goddamn comment. He did say exactly the same thing. Energy and matter are separate. It's the same exact words 3 times. And so Wheeler must say it, as he has seen I am correct, and he is a thief. Smiley face. You're both nuts. Alright, energy moves matter. Matter is dead and lifeless unless energy moves it. Well, again, I went to all this trouble to say there's force and there's matter, and now you're saying energy. Or whatever. It's quite simple, really. Well, it's not really that simple. I mean, it's simple, but it's not so simple that you can say something like, energy moves matter, and that's all you have to say. Because it is a little complicated in how the motion is moved throughout every little element inside the matter. It's a little bit sophisticated. Alright, so some mad dog Morgan. I mean, who would call themselves these things? You have to just say, troll much. Alright, smack on the head. Good on ya. I don't know whether that's... I don't know. Delete, no delete. Yeah, I'll just forget about it. I'll just pretend I didn't see that rubbish and mush. Alright, so, no point in putting the camera here because I guess I'll have to draw. So I was thinking I would try to say a little bit more about Einstein's gravity, because people don't really seem to understand what it is, the implications of it, and how my explanation is so much more rational than the Einstein unfinished theory of gravity. Alright, so they always do this. Oh, look, it's bending the fabric of space-time. And, you know, like there's a little mass here, and this is space and time, and it got crookedy, blah, blah, blah. But this is a two-dimensional thing. It won't work in 3 dimensions. So what the math is really describing is if you were looking at it from overhead, it's just a convergence, which means there's stuff pulling into the center. So the center just constantly pulls. And so, you know, I don't know how exactly to describe that, but it's mathematically called an anti-divergence, you know, a convergence. And it basically means that space is being pulled into the center of the mass, the center of its gravity. So in the center of the sun, the idea is that space is being pulled in, pulled in, pulled in. And so anything riding on the space by a certain equation is being dragged, you know, based on its, let's see, how's the best way to say it? Based on its grip, tension. Let's say it's tension with the surface. And that tension is based on atomic weight, is how much the surface will grab the thing and how much of the fabric will pull it. And so how well it sticks to the fabric is sort of the mass equation. And the more it sticks, the heavier the thing can be, and it'll get pulled along. But everything, no matter how big or small it is, gets pulled at the same rate. It ends up being the same speed, because it's really just about the more massive thing needs more ropes tied to it. So if you thought of these as little strings, the heavy thing needs to have more strings to be able to be pulled, and the little thing only needs 1 string. But anyway, that's making this more complicated. I just want to get to the fact that this is what Einstein's theory is saying. There's stuff going into this drain. So it's described quite literally. It's analogized in physics lectures at, you know, by Gus Skine at Stanford as water. Okay, a flat plane of water at consistent pressure going down a drain. And that's essentially an endless supply comes in and it goes down the drain. And that's the math. That's their model of this thing called gravity. So we're not given any mechanism for how space is pulled. We're not given any machinery that can keep pulling the space, pull, pull, pull. And the space isn't obviously space. It's some sort of ether, some sort of jello thing that's pulled, sucked in, and it drags, you know, the bodies with it. Now, I mean, my theory is exactly the same thing, except the difference is the machine isn't in here pulling. The machine is out here just creating this pressure, so that every body has this pressure imposed from the outside. So there's nothing pulling on the inside, there's nothing draining, there's just pressure on the outside from these little bits, like the cosmic background radiation. It just exists, and it's out there, and it's constantly hitting and constantly pushing on everything that has any matter in it, any material structure. So from the tiniest electron, proton, every one of those is just being surrounded by this pressure. The same pressure that's around the sun is around the electron and the proton. And as bodies become, just like in Einstein's model, if I take 2 of these things that are sucking in, okay, pulling in space, you could see that the stream flow, the flow of their stream water, the flow of the river would interfere with each other. So if there was another one over here sucking stuff in, you could see that they would be doing extra sucking, you know, because the two would be pulling, and there wouldn't be enough coming in to satisfy their hunger for fluid, and so they'd have to move towards each other to get more fluid, because they have to pull the same amount of the ether or the bent space or whatever you want to call it, the space-time. They have to pull the same amount all the time, and if they're pulling against each other, then they're going to move into each other to try to get to more of it. They're going to try to get more, And the same thing happens when, in my model, two things get close together, then these arrows all of a sudden start disappearing. And so you have more arrows over here that are going to get absorbed as velocity than arrows coming this way that get absorbed as velocity. So the thing will obviously move in that direction. And just like as pointed out, if I'm a little electron and I'm in this field, there will be irregularities every millisecond where I might get hit by only 4 things on this side, and the next millisecond I'm getting hit by 6, and then it goes back to 3, and then it goes to 7. So there's always a little bit of variance. So everything's shuddering in place. Everything's just, you know, shuddering a little bit, moving a little bit back and forth, shuddering because of this field energy. Now they call that vacuum energy. These physicists, you know, the Einstein types, they sit there and say this is a quantum vacuum energy, this shuddering, because they don't think it's coming from an external force moving the electron. They think it's coming from inside the electron. They think inside the electron there's a little Mexican jumping bean, you know, called quantum vacuum energy, and it's making the electron shudder. No, the electron shudders because there's tiny bits of randomness in this field energy. I mean, over time it'll stay where it is. I mean, but it might move around and go here and here and here and here and here. It might move around all kinds of places, but the laws of averages are it's always going to end up pretty much in its center of gravity, this one location. So instead of saying quantum mechanic vacuum energy, no, the shudder is being caused by the field. So they have whole complex problems where they have to create all this dark energy, and they have to worry about how expanding the universe is and how contracting it is, just because they're making up a force that doesn't exist. There's nothing inside of, there's no quantum energy. There's no magic source of energy. Energy always has to have a source, an origin, a force. The Earth doesn't move because there's some, you know, little special sucking device inside the middle of it that's pulling in space-time. No, it moves because there's a force, and as you shadow the force, you create low pressure, and the low pressure will force the things that are existing to move into it. But the trick is the low pressure is created by one thing at a time. This thing doesn't feel its own low pressure. So when this thing is, when I'm shadowing you, let's say you're standing and and I shadow you, I don't feel the shadow. You feel the shadow. And then if you shadow me, you don't feel the shadow. I feel the shadow. See, Newton basically said shadow is shadow. And so he said M1, M2, let's just put it together and say they're shadow. You know, he's just saying I don't care whether shadow is coming from this guy or this guy. I'm just going to add up shadow, no shadow equals shadow. So he's just saying it's always some kind of shadow. So there's no recognition that, no, the force is only, there's a shadow on one guy at one time. This guy gets shadowed or this guy gets shadowed, but they don't shadow at the same rate or at the same moment. They don't feel each other's shadow. So the gravity the sun creates is not the gravity it feels. It feels only the little bit of earth gravity. It moves only the amount the earth, the thickness of the earth, or the amount of the amount of distance the Earth moves towards the Sun. So if you think about the orbit and you say, okay, it orbits this way, instead it would go straight, and you add up this distance, and you say, okay, this is the distance the Earth moved technically towards the Sun to be in an orbit. That's how far the Sun will move. 1 Earth's mass of the Sun. See, the whole Sun doesn't move the distance the Earth moves, just 1 Earth of its mass. So 1/1,000,000th of its total mass will move the distance the Earth moved in response. So we don't see the Sun move, but an Earth's worth of mass inside the Sun will move the same distance that the Earth moved. And that'll be its response. And that creates a shadow. And then the Earth moves into that shadow. And then the Sun moves into that shadow. And they just keep moving into the shadow they keep creating. Alright, that's not really making a comparison between the two theories. I'm just saying quite obviously what makes more sense. Okay, this idea of a drain inside of matter, inside the center of matter, that's pulling stuff in, and pulling, constantly and perpetually pulling to drag things into it. Or, yes, there's field energy, and the field energy creates high pressure and low pressure, and things move into the low pressure. So, you know, Einstein never even had to worry about drag questions and stuff like that with his mechanism, because he did put the machine inside, you know, the matter. He did put the sucker inside here. But it still does raise some questions as to how you can be pulling space-time. Because let's say you are moving. Let's say the Sun's moving in a direction very fast, and it's pulling. Just as, you know, from both sides. But it's moving. It's the same argument in terms of there's an energy problem with that. Because the stuff you're moving into, you should be pulling faster. And the stuff you're moving away from should be harder to pull in. Because that's demonstrated in the fact that through this pulling mechanism, as I did illustrate somewhere here, you know, I know it doesn't look like that, but that's what this drawing was when you had two material objects pulling, they'd end up running out of fluid, and they'd fight for the fluid, and in the fight for the fluid they'd end up moving towards each other. And the point would be is that, yes, you have a velocity in this fluid, you'd have the same problem. This fluid would be hard to pull because you're moving away from it, and this fluid would be pulling you'd be getting too much. And so you'd have the same kind of energy equation problem. But they've made it such an obscure thing by calling it space-time and making it a non-material medium, that is, a medium that's not a real force. They don't have to account for anything because the energy is never explained. They never explain where the energy to pull this fabric comes from. So they have always a way of getting out of any thermodynamic problem because it's not part of the real universe. None of this energy has any of the consequences of real energy. So they don't have to account for it at all. Which just gives them a huge cheat, in my opinion. But anyway, you can just see that Einstein's model is not a great model. It's not a great explanation to create this pull force. When the push force explains it so much better, and it just makes so much more sense because you don't need to have this perpetual energy machine. All you need to understand is, like cosmic background radiation, that there's a bunch of this radiation we can't detect with a regular Geiger counter or something. We can't see it with our eye. You know, we only see a tiny spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum. We don't see magnetism coming off a magnet. I mean, clearly there's things that are not easy to detect, but clearly we can't detect gravity. We can watch it work. And I'm just saying, you really think that it makes more sense to think of this pen being pulled to the Earth because there's a flow of space-time that's going to drag it down? That makes more sense to you than recognizing that, yes, there's a bunch of this invisible radiation, just like the microwaves and the radio waves and the cosmic rays and the X-rays and all the other rays that are flying around, and they're pushing the pen into the Earth. because the Earth is shadowing, absorbing all the energy that would have hit this pen on the bottom. And now it's getting hit by more stuff from the outside universe, just coming through the little thin atmosphere. Nothing's getting blocked, so it's getting hit by a whole bunch of stuff on this top, and it's not getting hit by anything on the bottom as much. And it's just absorbing that velocity. But I just want to be clear that when people argue that, like the fucktarded cowboy, that somehow the math doesn't support what I'm saying, or particle gravity, of course it does. Because Einstein's convergence is exactly the same thing as particle gravity, and the only difference is whether it's something pulling from the middle of something's center of gravity, or whether it's a force pushing towards the center of something's gravity. That's the only difference. Einstein's equation doesn't have in it pull or push. It just has the convergence. So you can have either way as a description. You can have water flowing towards material things, or you can have water being pulled down a drain. So you can have water coming from the external world filling up and creating pressure, or you can just pull the drain, and let the water drain down a drain and drain out. Which one makes more sense? The one where you don't even need a drain, because you only need one, at least it's one source, right? It's just water keeps coming in, but you don't have to drain it anywhere. The pressure will take care of itself. Or one where you have to drain it. Because see, the drag in the particle theory the drag doesn't have to go down the drain. The mechanism that's pulling is the absorption of the velocity. So it's not destroyed. That velocity will be realized. All of that energy that it absorbed, all that motion going this way towards the thing, all this motion that it absorbed, when it hits the sun, it's going to release it all back. So all that energy will be released. It doesn't go down a drain, so you don't have to explain where did the energy go, where Einstein's theory leaves it open. Where did the energy go? Where did all that pulled in bent space go? So, yeah, I think that's probably enough. But there's nothing in Einstein's field equations. There's no symbol, there's no piece, there's no anything that obliges you not, that says you can't just